All right. So we have a few more folks joining us. I think we are good to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Lydia Jordan Parnell. I'm a member of Women of Willis and an employee of EQ Office. Thank you so much for joining us for today's virtual giving webinar with Cradles to Crayons. Before we dive into learning about this amazing cause, a few notes about Women of Willis for those of you who are not familiar. Women of Willis is a building-wide networking initiative created to empower, elevate, and connect the women working within our neighborhood. We host events that we intend to share best practices to advance women in leadership positions, network and connect with like-minded individuals, create a community of women from different companies within the building, create a platform where people can socialize and share professional challenges and solutions, and foster mentorship opportunities. We host programs throughout the year, so we welcome you to subscribe to our e-blast list to stay up to date on the latest Women of Willis programming by emailing us at womenofwillis@willistower.com. A few housekeeping things for today's call. Today's call is being recorded, and we'll share a version of that recording after today's call in case you have to dip out or in case any of your colleagues might enjoy today's content. That way you can pass it along to them. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Nick Anderson, who will be talking to us about Cradles to Crayons, which is a nonprofit that provides children between the ages of 0 to 12 with all of the essentials they need to thrive at home, at school, and at play. Cradles to Crayons provides these items completely free of charge by engaging and connecting with communities across the Chicagoland. Nick Anderson is Cradle to Crayons Development Coordinator, and he'll be talking to us today on the issue of clothing insecurity in our community and sharing how we can help. Without further ado, Nick Anderson.
Thank you so much, Lydia. And I just want to thank everybody here for coming to listen to this presentation on clothing insecurity, for taking the time out of your day to hear about our work at Cradles to Crayons, and to learn a little bit more about how you can get involved here today. So thank you so much. I will go ahead and jump in. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. So to begin, clothing insecurity is the focus point of our organization. It is what we at Cradles to Crayons call a hidden basic needs crisis. You can think of it in a similar manner to issues such as housing insecurity or food insecurity. And in fact, thinking and framing clothing insecurity alongside those other two and the many other insecurities families who are homeless or are in low-income situations face, it helps us to better bolster the work that all of our partner organizations are doing across Chicagoland and across the country. So clothing insecurity is a little bit specific, and that's intentional, and I'll tell you why. But first, we'll begin with a framing quote that, in my personal life, I find very, very animating and inspiring, and is inspirational to the work that we do at Cradles to Crayons. Here on the screen, you have a picture of Mary's Defense Fund. It's an advocacy organization that is across the nation, based in Washington 73. Here is a quote from her giving a commencement speech at Milton Academy in the summer of 1983, in which she told the class of students who were sitting there moments before they would walk on stage and graduate from the academy. She told them that they ought to pick a piece of the problem that you can help solve while trying to see how your piece fits into the broader social change puzzle. At Cradles to Crayons, that piece is clothing insecurity. It's something that we take as core to our mission to serve. It's what our founder, Lynn Margario, saw when she established our organization nearly 20 years ago. It was how she saw we could make an impact across the nation in our offices, not only in Chicago, but also in Boston and Philadelphia. And it's how she came, we do each and every day, which, as Lydia stated, our mission is to provide children from birth through age 12 with those essential items at home, at school, and at play. The work of Cradles to Crayons is making sure that what a child has is completely their own. And I'll tell you how we do that here in a moment. But here is our mission, and the vision that we hold is that one day, every child who receives our services, well, excuse
I'm so sorry. I think we lost Nick, but we're going to get him back in just a second.
Excuse me, I seem to have lost connection there for a second. I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen.
No worries. Thanks, Nick. And
Okay, of
we're
course.
getting a little bit of a delay. So if that continues, it could help to disable your camera momentarily, but I'll ping you if it's acting a little fuzzy.
Okay.
I'm happy to share the content if needed too.
Excellent. Yes. Thank you, Lydia and Lauren. Great. So our vision at Cradles to Crayons is that one day, every child will have the essentials that they need to feel safe, warm, ready to learn, and valued. The work that we do at Cradles to Crayons truly is focused not only on the material conditions for each child, but also the effect that that has on their emotional state and how it affects a child's ability to show up in the classroom, to show up completely as themselves. So how did we adopt this issue of clothing insecurity? How do we come to own it? Here on this page, you see a picture of former First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt holding up the newly ratified Universal Declaration of Human Rights that the United Nations Charter, something that she had a hand in writing in the 1940s. As published in 1948, this document states that everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and his family. That includes food, clothing, and housing. And it states that motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. So what you see here and what we adopted in our organization is making that puzzle piece just a little bit smaller to fit into this cause so that we can do an even better job of making sure the work that we do is meeting the high quality that we want it to for our partner organizations. When I mention quality, what I mean by that is it's a core tenet of our organization at Cradles. So we believe if you have been there in our warehouse, you'll have seen this sign right up above the screen where all the volunteers gather at the beginning of their volunteer shifts. It states that quality equals dignity. What that means is that every item we distribute, whether it be a collection of books so a child can start their little library, clothing that a child can wear to school, or a nice winter coat so that they can get to school safely. Those items we want to make sure are completely and uniquely that child's own. So we're not going to distribute any shirts that have a specific high school on the front of them. No shirts or jackets with the name of a child on an inside cover, or books that have a name written on the collar, or books that have the name written on the cover either. So we believe that every child deserves the opportunity to succeed, and that every child, in order to succeed, needs access to those basic materials. You have to get them to a place of being physically and emotionally secured. And that's what that core tenet of quality equals dignity touches at. So we've talked a fair amount around clothing insecurity, but I haven't yet shared with you our definition at Cradles to Crayons. And what you see here on the screen is that definition. It's what we call the 4 A's. So we define clothing insecurity as the lack of access to affordable, adequate, appropriate clothing. Those 4 issue areas it is how we approach, how we target clothing insecurity in the work that we do. So let's pull out those 4 A's, and I'll tell you how we approach them at Cradles. So, access. We distribute items through a wide web of partner organizations. At Cradles to Crayons, we hold 59 other nonprofit social service agencies in partnership with the work that we do. Those are the organizations that may be a school, it may be a food pantry, it may be a shelter or a hospital. It's an organization that also provides basic needs, whether it be addressing food insecurity, housing insecurity, lack of access to healthcare, etc. we work with those organizations to make sure that the children they work with, who are between the ages of 0 to 12, have access to dependable clothing of such high quality standards. We make sure that they're affordable for the families who receive our services by not charging a single dime to our partner organizations, and certainly not to the children and families who receive these items. We make sure that these routes stay open. We don't ask for any identifying information from the families and children who receive these items, and we do not prohibit any organization with a certain cap at the amount of orders that they can place through our organization. So we know that situations change constantly, especially in the pandemic, and which is still a very vivid reality, as we all know here on this Zoom call. And I'll share more about how we address that crisis in particular here in a moment. We make sure that the clothing we distribute, that is adequate, that a child is receiving an entire week full of clothes. They're not just going to get a pair of pants. They're not just going to get a pair of pants that they can wear in school either. We're making sure that each child will receive a full week of clothes that are suitable for that child to wear, whether it be on the playground, in the classroom, or comfortably at home. And that takes us to that fourth A, appropriate. We make sure that the items we distribute are gender specific. They fit the size of the child that's requesting them, and also fits with current style and seasonal options as well. So right now, as we're nearly finished with the summer, we've got 1 day left. When the weather turns cold, we're not going to distribute tank tops or shorts any longer. We're going to make sure folks have sweaters, that they have long pants, that they have clothing that they're going to use at that moment in the year, because we need to meet those basic needs in the moment in which they arise. Another note about appropriate, which is pretty interesting, is that at Cradles to Crayons, we accept clothing donations up to an adult size medium. However, we recognize that not every article of clothing that's an adult size medium would be something an 11 or 12-year-old would want to wear. So we apply that quality equals dignity standard to make sure that the items we're giving out aren't something that a child would feel uncomfortable or out of place to wear while running around the playground at recess. Here we have kind of a case study. This is an example of a child who could receive our services at Cradles to Crayons. This is Amelia, whose family is facing clothing insecurity, among likely many other insecurities like the families face whom we serve. So this is a child who is serviced at one of our partner organizations. It could be a Chicago public school. It could be Mount Sinai Hospital. It could be the Lakeview Food Pantry. In working together, we're allowing those organizations to focus on meeting the remaining needs that someone like Amelia and her family may face on the day-to-day by providing her with all the items that you see here in the bag that she is holding. So here is Amelia's story. And this is a stand-in, right, for the many stories that we approach and encounter on the day-to-day work at Cradles to Crayons. So it states that Amelia lives with her grandmother, that her grandmother is on family leave from work and doesn't have an income at this time. State that her grandmother is struggling to pay her own rent and other bills, and that Amelia doesn't have enough clothing items and the family is unable to provide any. So as an organization, we know that in terms of a hierarchy of needs, clothing is not going to be at the top of that pyramid. We know that there are those essentials such as food and housing and water that may come before things like clothing. But if we're able to make sure that Amelia's family is able to keep the lights on and keep food on the table and receive high quality clothing and books and other essential items, we want to make sure that that happens, because a child deserves those things too. We also know that when facing an issue of clothing insecurity, and this speaks to that emotional toll it may have, it's among the top 10 reasons a child doesn't attend school. Whether they don't have the proper shoes or clothing to make it there to the classroom, whether they don't feel like they fit in or lack the school supplies available to them to learn, to feel ready to learn in the classroom. And in fact, the needing the school supplies, it references the end of the initiative that we're in at this time now, which is our Ready for Learning initiative, in which we provided across Chicagoland more than 65,000 backpacks filled with school supplies. So not only are we able to provide hundreds of thousands of Chicagoland children with the clothing essentials that they need, those books, hygiene materials, diapers if needed. We're also providing those school supplies as well, because they are as essential. In our community, we have noticed a really stark thing over the course of the pandemic, which is to say that the pandemic really peeled the cover off of the reality for many children and many families in our city of Chicago. So no new realities were faced through the course of the pandemic. In fact, they were highlighted and elevated in the work that we needed to do. So by nature of being a basic need organization, when we noticed that our doors shuttered to volunteers and accepting donations at that time, and we saw an increased dramatic need all across the city, a need for things that had to be there, not at the end of the month, not at the end of the week, but by the end of the day, we really had to step up to the plate to make sure we could provide those items, as we did. That's providing thousands and thousands of diapers, of other hygiene materials, of things like masks and hand sanitizers out throughout the community to make sure folks had those in the moment. We're at an interesting point in the course of the pandemic at this time, additionally. So in fact, recently there was a New York Times published a report on a story, or published a story on a report which stated that actually a lot of families were able to skirt the poverty line within the last year due to federal relief, due to the various federal relief programs that were available over the last year. With many of those programs approaching an end or having already ended, what we anticipate at Cradles to Crayons is that there will be another spike in need for these essential items. If someone has been able to make by with rent or make by with the increased unemployment and is not able to do so anymore, we anticipate that the needs for our services will increase. So now is as important of a time as ever to get involved with our organization at Cradles to Crayons as we anticipate this increased need. How do we do this work across the community? We do it one child at a time. In order to provide a future free of need, that is ensuring that children like Amelia have the appropriate clothing they need to play outside all year and arrive at school warm, ready to learn, and dressed for recess, which is kind of a cute way of saying dress for success, if you can't already tell. So in doing this work, we balance two things. We balance the fact that across Chicago, there are nearly 250,000 children who could be receiving our services, who could benefit from our services. We balance that great need across a large geographic area with the importance of the individual and the importance of serving the individual at their specific needs. It is only in making sure that a child like Amelia, not the stand-in that we discuss or the example that we hear about, but the actual person has their needs, has their clothing that fits them, their books at their reading level, the diapers that the family may need. We make sure that those items are provided on the individual level in order to reach that goal of serving hundreds of thousands of children year after year. And it's only with your support. So how do you make a difference at Cradles to Crayons? We have kind of in the same way, one child at a time. As you can see here, we have this quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which we have in our Giving Factory up on the walls, alongside quotes from legendary anthropologist Margaret Mead, in addition to legendary first Black mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington. So this quote that a lot of folks find animating when they come and visit us at the Giving Factory to volunteer or to just tour the facility or to see what we have going on is that everybody can be great because anybody can serve. And that's the truth. Any activity that we have at Cradles to Crayons, whether it's the one that I'll fill you in on with the well-wish notes here in a moment, or the three that I'll share with you, all of those are available to you and at your disposal to make a difference in our community and make that difference in just one child's life to ensure that we're able to do this work across the map. So we have here some cute photos of ways to get involved, including donating items. So what you see here is a picture of my colleague Yaritza standing with packages that have been sent to us of winter coats about a year ago through our Amazon wish list. We also receive donations at the Giving Factory or drop-off locations throughout the city and the suburbs. We depend upon a community of people who can contribute their items to us, whether it be by purchasing or clearing out their closets of clothing that their children don't wear anymore to make sure that it can go to a good home. Those items will take, volunteers will sort them for quality and prepare them for distribution to one of those 59 partner organizations. So the second way to stay involved with us is to volunteer. Here we have a photo of one of our champion volunteers, Yvette, who comes in every Thursday with a team of her friends to sort through clothing donations. You can see the difference that she makes, not only for the individual child who will receive that pink shirt in her hands, but the many children who will receive many of the folded clothes that she has there laid out on the card table that have been checked for quality, that has had that extra eye of care to make sure that when a child receives them, they're not receiving something with holes, rips, tears, or stains, or a name written on the inside collar. They're receiving something that is completely their own. Another way to stay involved is to contribute your funds if you are able. So what you see here is a photo of 3 children who received coats through Cradles to Crayons last winter. We as an organization recognize that there are going to be some items that we cannot collect from the community. We're not going to distribute anyone's used underwear or used bedding or used items of that nature. And in fact, we can make an even larger difference through leveraging our power as a national organization for bulk purchasing. All of our purchasing at Cradles to Crayons, whether it be in Boston, Philadelphia, and Chicago, is done together. So we're able to purchase thousands and thousands of things like winter coats, those backpacks with school supplies, and shoes to provide those new items in a much more streamlined route than to collect them. And this picture brings up our current initiative at Cradles to Crayons, which will begin on October 1st when we begin to distribute hats, scarves, gloves, winter boots, and the coats that you see here on the screen. That's our Gear Up for Winter initiative. This is the work that we'll be doing from October 1st to the end of March, making sure that 54,000 Chicagoland children receive those warm winter essentials. We understand that we've got a long, cold winter ahead of us, so it's been a pretty hot summer so far. We want to make sure that we are as prepared as possible. When you donate to Cradles to Crayons, you're helping us be able to purchase those items for the 54,000 children who will receive them. So how to get involved? I have a couple of links here on the screen, but I know you're going to receive them in the follow-up email, which will tell you how you can volunteer with us, which will tell you how you can donate your items and clean out your closets, and we'll tell you how you can fund the cause for us at Cradles. But so what I'll discuss here on this next slide are the well-wish notes that you may have been working on or will work on before you send them on to us at the Giving Factory. So well-wish notes are interesting. They are key to that quality equals dignity part. So I think the well-wish notes really do approach that balance between, the macro, we live in a great city with need all across our communities, across all of our communities, and the micro of an individual child will receive these items, and we ought not to forget that. So our well-wish notes are notes of encouragement that we put in our backpacks, that we put in those packs of hats, scarves, and gloves that let a child know that there is somebody else out there who is putting this work together. It individualizes, it personalizes the work that we do. So what we're asking you to do is to take an index card, 3x5 index card, a piece of paper, anything that could fit into a gallon-sized bag or a backpack, some colored pencils, crayons, and get your creativity going to write an encouraging message on those index cards. You can design with some fun colors, as you can see here in the example, or sweet phrases as well, like you are a rock star, or be courageous, or you've got this, or smile, or you can see all the examples here on the screen. Because we don't assume anything about the children and families who will receive these items, we do ask that you refrain from religious, holiday, or family references. We want to create something that could go to any child, though it is important for the individual. You're going to package those well-wish note cards into an envelope, and you'll mail them to us at the Giving Factory. And I have our address here on the last slide, though I imagine it'll also be sent in the follow-up as well. And just place attention well-wish notes so we know what's in there when we open it up to prepare them for distribution. So I will pass it now. Here's my contact information in case you want it. I will just say, if you are interested in any of these opportunities and you want to just reach out to me directly, you're more than welcome to do so. Here's my email address. I'm sure you will also have it in the follow-up as well, but I'm happy to address anything that may come up, questions that you may have, not only at this time, but following this presentation, and make sure that if you want to come on in and volunteer with your family, if you want to learn how you can set up a fundraiser for your family this upcoming end of the year, just let me know. I'm happy to find a way that will work to get you and your friends, your family, and your loved ones involved with us at Cradles to Crayons. So I will, at this time, pass it over to Lydia for some quick closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Nick, for that presentation. And I just want to say, pre-pandemic, I actually was able to go to C2C a couple of years ago. And wow, it's such an amazing experience. You think about waking up in the morning and thinking about, what am I going to wear? That question has a different weight to it in context, thinking about people who don't have options for clothing, not just to fit their style and their aesthetic, but to keep them warm, to make them feel safe, to make them feel welcome. So the work that Cradles to Crayons is doing is incredibly important. And we are so pleased to work with you, Nick, and to have had the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the issues of clothing insecurity today. And I want to take a moment to ask those who've joined us on today's call if there are any questions. Feel free to either unmute yourself and ask, to drop the questions in the chat. But if there are any questions, feel free to share at this time.
Hi, it's Ellen Kroner from Willis Towers Watson. Thanks for your presentation, Nick. It was really great. And I know that there are a lot of people not on today's call that would welcome the opportunity to participate in this wonderful opportunity to share resources with kids in need. And is it okay to just forward the presentation materials and your contact information along to people, the rest of our office, so that they can participate in this effort as well as the Women of Willis?
Absolutely. I think that would be tremendous. As wide as a reach as we can get, I think is going to be welcome. Thank you for that, Ellen.
Yeah, great.
Wonderful.
We look forward to doing that.
Thank you for your question, Ellen. We also had a question come in through the chat. How many facilities are in Illinois and where are the locations in Chicago?
That's a great question. So we have one location in Chicago. We are located near the Logan Square neighborhood at Pulaski and Diversey at our Giving Factory on George Street. It's at George and Pulaski is where we are located. It is a, about 20,000 foot warehouse where we have our volunteers and we collect all the materials that are contributed and we distribute them to nonprofit organizations all across the map. So this includes all across Cook County and a little bit into DuPage County as well. So that's kind of our range in Illinois, though we have only one facility in the city of Chicago.
Thank you for that. That's helpful context. Do you have any other questions, audience members? We will include Nick's contact information and some resource links on how to keep the conversation going and continue support of Cradles to Crayons in our post-event communication going out tomorrow. So we are happy to share there. And if there are no further questions, thank you, Nick, again so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And we encourage you all to just keep an eye out for our future Women of Willis events.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Women of Willis, Lydia, Lauren, Bev, Angela, wherever you may be. Thank you so much for having me here today. This is really great to share with you all.
Thank you so much for coming. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.